now see that we are live stream, so I'll just repeat the welcome I gave earlier to those of you who are joining us on live stream for this global networking event. Yes, I was just saying that we were, I think, fortunate in our timing, although we didn't realize it at the time, that we started in January of 2020, just before COVID, because we felt it was really important that in the media space, in our networking endeavors, that we reach out across the globe, because it is a global industry. So we've been doing that since early 2020, and our aim is to connect professionals in the media sector, and that's broadly people involved in media, marketing, technology, law, policy, data science, regulation, to provide a platform and a more interactive platform, as I hope you'll see today, because whenever we meet virtually or in person, we have a conversation. We meet people, not just profiles. And I hope that we provide an opportunity for you to stay ahead of new developments, but also to find new opportunities to start projects and businesses, because we all know every great business starts with a conversation. And I think already it's fair to say we've connected a number of people who've also together started new enterprises, new projects, and new businesses. And we now have members from more than 70 countries. And because of that, and because many of them are members who are leaders in their field, in their countries, we've started a premium membership club, the Mediaspace Global Leadership Club, which is very diverse across all those sectors, but it's really to connect those who are leading the field in the media. Because even if you are a leader, you still need to connect with other leaders. You need to connect with those who are up and coming, the stars of the future. So Kinga will say a little bit more about that later, but we do invite you to become part of that leadership club, because we depend upon you to provide leadership. And we're very, very grateful to those who've already joined. So I will pause there and invite Kinga to say a few words before we continue. Kinga.
Thank you. And I just would like to say a couple of words because Hamish mentioned the goal of Mediaspace.global. So my name is Kinga. I'm a media expert and the founder and CEO of Mediaspace.global. We are building a global ecosystem to break local and elitist business bubbles to create something new. And this something new is, we believe, a more interactive network of ambitious and leading professionals all around the globe. As a founder myself, I obviously know how crucial it is to find new people, new opportunities. So that's why we started our monthly global networking sessions virtually. And what we also experienced was that, as Hamish mentioned, that some of the attendees started to follow up conversations and finally started to work together. So one of the objectives of this networking session today is to learn from the panelists and from panelists and from each other, but obviously on the other hand, we want to create meaningful connections among who are here today. So I hope this will be happening today as well. Thank you, Hamish.
Thank you, Kinga. We'll hear from you again, I'm sure, because you'll take part in the conversation later. But let me turn now to the format and some of the housekeeping rules for this event. There'll be two main parts once we finish these introductions. We'll have a fireside chat with our special guests, and that's live stream, so that is public. And then we'll have a networking session, which is private, and where everybody on the call can join in the conversation. This is not going to be a webinar. I hate webinars where you just sit there mute and unseen and unheard. We will invite all of you to take part in the conversation. So if you haven't already done so, it'd be very helpful if you could put your full name and a company name, if you wish, onto the screen so that I can call upon you to speak. So your name, and if you haven't already signed up to Mediaspace.global, please do so. It's a free event, but it is for members only. So do please join and become a member if you aren't already. And you can put your name and email address in the chat if you'd like to provide others with a link to get in touch with you, either via Mediaspace itself or in any other way that is appropriate. So we move now to part one of the event, the fireside chat. I'm feeling quite chilly. I rather wish I was beside a fire, but it's a metaphorical fireside, I think we're talking about. And we have an incredible lineup of people. I think the common theme is probably innovation, because we've got three great innovators, people who've started businesses. And I think we are going to learn a lot from them about how and why they did that. So I'll just introduce the three of them first, and then I'll invite them to answer some questions. And of course, they will stay through the networking as well, so you can come back to them in the conversation to put your questions or comments to them based upon what you've heard in the fireside chat. So not in order of importance, we have Greta Dunn, founder and CEO of Marker Content. You'll hear more about her business from her. I won't try to describe it myself. I'd rather hear it from her. Then we've got Guillaume Kendall, founder of the Attention Exchange. And thirdly, John Stammel, founder of Umiji. I hope I've pronounced that right, John, but you'll correct me. And what I'll do first, just ask you all to do what we always do on these conversations, introduce yourself very, very briefly. We don't want your life history or your CV. So if you could just give your name, your position, your company, and where you're speaking from, your location. So I'll illustrate how it's done. So I'm Hamish Sanderson. I'm the chair of White Report Global. I'm an international lawyer qualified in the US and the UK. And I am speaking from Wales in the west of the United Kingdom. So if you could each do that little introduction, and then I'd like you to start to tell us about how you came up with your idea, what was the problem that you identified that needed a solution that led to you creating your startup. So first, an introduction. Greta, I'll start with you. Would you like to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your idea, your solution, why you decided that you needed to solve a problem? Greta.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Greta Dunn, and I'm founder and CEO of Marker Content, which is a article library of stock articles. I'm joining you all from Dublin in Ireland. So do you want me to go into now? Yeah, where I got the idea?
Just give us the thumbnail, and then we can explore that further.
Sure. So my first startup was a magazine, an online magazine for college students, and then I developed another one for teenagers. And the large majority of our revenue came from advertorials or native advertising, where brands would put their new product or service into our best performing articles. So I sold those magazines in 2016, and I got really interested in content marketing and the revenue that was going through it and how it was working. And I researched different marketplaces that were using stock content, whether it be photographs or videos. And I started Marker Content. I designed it around the likes of Shutterstock or Getty Images. And my goal was to create something where writers, copywriters, freelance writers around the world could easily upload their back catalogue of content that could be resold. And I would resell that to businesses who needed it.
Great. Let's stop there, and I've got some questions for you, but we'll return to you in a moment. Let me turn now to Guillaume. If you'd like to introduce yourself with that very short introduction, and then just tell us what the problem was that you felt need solving, and why you set up your company to solve that problem. So Guillaume, over to you.
Sure, thank you. Good morning, afternoon, everyone. So yeah, my name is Guillaume, and I'm founder of the Attention Exchange. So my background's in fintech, not ad tech, and there's something called open banking here in the UK, but now spreading across Europe, and I'm pleased to say becoming increasingly available in the US, where the consumer owns their access and the availability of their banking transactions. And I was on Instagram a couple of years ago, having just spent quite a lot of money with Patch Plants, who deliver plants, and it's a very lovely service that they provide. But then I was hounded across the entire internet for the next 3 months by Patch Plants. Every YouTube video, every website, everything I went to was interrupted by who I'd just become a customer of. Of course, if they saw my bank account information, they would have known I was a customer. They might have stopped harassing me. And in fact, it became such a frustration. I thought there has to be a better way. So I set up the Attention Exchange, which is an open banking based advertising platform where we target and reward consumers who share their immutable banking data with us.
Great, thank you, Guillaume. That's a good start. We'll come back to you. Last but not least, John, would you like to give your brief personal introduction and then tell us about Umiji and why you set it up?
Sure. I am CEO and co-founder of Umiji. I'm based in New York City. Our staff is pretty much all over the world. Umiji is a platform where brands can build digital relationships with their customers based on their customers' interests, needs, and perceptions. So we can append any information that a brand has on their customers, whether it's closed-ended or open-ended, meaning it's language, to their database files, and then they can be segmented by any of those criteria. And we view those as leading indicators of consumer behavior versus what most platforms do based on past purchases, web behavior and tracking, most of which is going away, and past demographics. We're focused on what I would call accessible luxury or aspirational products that companies are selling to Gen Z and millennials.
Great, thank you, John. Interesting. So let me go back to Greta. What were the biggest challenges you faced, Greta, in setting up your new business, and how did you overcome them? Have you overcome them, or are you still wrestling with them? What your challenges and how to overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, I think every founder and startup, there is no shortage of challenges. Even when you reach your targets and your milestones, there's just introduces more. So I think my first challenge was I suppose practically my first challenge was getting enough funding to actually build the MVP, to build the idea that I had in my head. I was able to do that through government funds and grants, which was great. And then the next step was, because it's a marketplace, it was satisfying the seller side of the marketplace. So I had studied kind of Airbnb and Depop and Etsy and different kind of same business kind of model, and the theme there was that you have to create the stock or the sellers before you can start getting the buyers. So that was my goal. I didn't know how I was going to do that, but I started to use social media, and eventually I kind of discovered that if I searched for copywriters and freelance writers and people who were really wanting to write, and I targeted them, and that I could unlock, a lot of people that really needed this solution, and really wanted to make money from selling their work online.
Can I ask you, did you do any market research in that space?
Yeah, I did a lot.
So know that there was a problem already.
Well, I worked as a copywriter myself for a while, just to see kind of where the pain points were there, and I just noticed that, I'd be working for a company, let's say a jewelry shop, and they would give me a brief, and I would send them back an article, and then they would want changes because it wasn't exactly what they wanted, and this kind of would go back and forth 5 or 6 times, and I would be charging them by the hour. So really, from the buyer point of view, I thought, this isn't actually conducive to like a good structure. And I thought there's so much stuff out there that actually, if they just had a library that they could flick through and then download that, and then they could kind of customize it themselves, it would be a better use of time, a better use of everybody's time. And really during my research, I mean, it was going through every Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter group I could find that had copywriters, freelance writers, bloggers, and asking them would they like something like this, and if it was available to them, would they upload their content, would they trust a brand that was going to sell it out for them. And so yeah, very quickly I think I got 6,000 email addresses of people who said that they wanted to subscribe to this. So that's really how I got my first grant, because I'd proven the need for it. Okay,
just one follow-up, and then I'll move on to Guillaume. Did you find, since you set it up, that it has changed in terms of its business model? Because we talked to a lot of founders who've gone through a lot of iterations before they get to a successful place. Or do you find that it's pretty much stayed as it was from day one?
Well, I think I suppose my vision and idea is almost, when I hear the other two gentlemen talking about their businesses, like it seems there's a lot behind it, very complex, as opposed to mine. It was just actually it's an old-fashioned business in that we have stock and we need to sell the stock, and we pay a commission for that stock. So the idea in itself hasn't pivoted an awful lot. The introduction of solutions like ChatGPT and AI content has definitely made me want to, whittle it down to exactly what we stand for and what our values are and what we are. I wouldn't call it a pivot. It just might be a rebranding or a remessaging stage we're at the moment, but ultimately the product is the same.
Right, that's very interesting. Thank you. Guillaume, would you like to highlight what your key challenge was and how you overcame it?
Sure. So I think my key challenge, not coming from the industry, was really appreciating quite how naive I was about how simple I thought our solution was. Whereas today, brands and agencies advertise using cookie and browsing behavior and everything else. Here I had this immutable proof, not that someone likes coffee, but they buy a coffee at £4.26 every morning at 8:55 from Costa Coffee, and they're likely to do it tomorrow. I see the last 3 years of their behavior. I'm connected for the next 90 days. Why wouldn't you want this perfect hyper targeting solution where also you've got real-time attribution? And the big aha moment for me, which came as a bit of a surprise, but maybe shouldn't have, is that agencies don't care. They care about the scale. They care about audience reach. And for them, reach means millions, or if not hundreds of thousands of impressions, views, and ultimately sub 1% engagement rates. And here I was sitting pretty with my 36% average click-through rate for my few hundred people that I knew was absolutely new to be valuable to that brand or that customer. So that was the first thing. And then it was compounded by the fact that to raise funding, you need to prove obviously scale. And we had this app, and I guess this follows on maybe to, if you ask me the same questions you asked Greta, how do we do any pivots? We realized that we had this very smart matching engine, but we only had one outlet for that value exchange to happen, the app. And so that was the pivot really from Zedosh, which is our first publisher, if you want to use that language, to the Attention Exchange, where we're onboarding 4 new publishers where audiences can connect via open banking and see relevant content. So that was really the main thing. I hadn't quite appreciated quite how the money flows today, and that fraud and all these other things just part of the equation that everyone is actually not that truly bothered about solving.
Yeah, just a related question I asked Greta, the market research, how much did you do your own market research or rely on other market research?
Yeah, good question. So before we invested any real proper money, we went out to Gen Z audience, UK Gen Z audience, and asked them about this, basically the process of sharing their banking transactions with us rather than not. And the overall, we went out to about 850 odd people and held workshops and everything else with them. The resounding response was yes, they would be happy to share that level of data with us in exchange for fair reward, better advertising. Actually, good ads aren't for what I experienced right at the beginning of this. And secondly, an interesting thing that came out was that they'd rather we saw their banking transactions than their browsing behavior. So, you know, and as I think, back to the point about the education to the market, is brands just weren't, very few people we spoke to from the media world really understood or knew about open banking. And the fact that we saw this incredibly sensitive, really granular level of data actually made them feel weird and uncomfortable about it. I think going back, we probably should have more market research on the buy side of attention rather than the supply side of attention. But,
yeah. Interesting. Thank you, Guillaume. Okay. John, over to you. Same question. What was your biggest challenge and how did you address it?
Well, I think like most entrepreneurs, we are under-resourced. And so that's certainly an issue that we're always facing on a daily basis. You know, our idea was to take all of the things that a marketing department does and combine them all into one platform. So when you look at functions like acquisition, customer management, customer understanding, engagement, and measurement, there are platforms that are out there that are all sold separately to do those things. But what we wanted to do is put them all on one platform, integrate them all, and increase the capabilities of what can be done because of that integration. So the programming behind the platform is basically, it's a beast. And we've been through 3 iterations, and we're now at one that is very stable, functions really well, and is working really well for clients. So that's been a challenge. On the marketing side, I think the challenge is that there are so many companies that are already using, they've got a CRM, and then they've got a market research platform, and then they've got some other platform for customer acquisition. So it's getting them to see that if you integrate them all and you have them all in one place, you're going to spend less time dealing with just raw data and trying to decide what's important and what to upload and that kind of thing. And I know you're going to ask me the next question about market research.
Yes, you beat me to it.
Yeah. So prior to this, I was a co-owner of a market research company. And so we saw what a lot of people were doing, and I think mistakes that they were making. I also owned an advertising agency for a little over 20 years, and we would commission a lot of market research, and we would have market researchers come back to us, and they would always tell us what a group believes. And I would always ask the same 2 questions, which is, you told us what they believe, can you tell us why they believe it? Because that's the important information. And the second is, did you append anything that you learned to database files so that we can have further use and we can put your research into action? And of course, no, they didn't. So we kept seeing this over and over again. So I wanted to build a platform that would enable brands to do this and combine it with all of the work that they do to build relationships with their customers and activate them.
Great. Thank you, John. Now we're down to the last 5 minutes for the panel, and then we'll go to networking. And I wanted to just ask you all to look forward. You've given us a fascinating narrative and a bit of history about how you got to where you are today. But take out your crystal balls. We're in January 2023, and I'd like you to share with us your one big piece of advice for 2023 for startups, people who are scaling up, people who are thinking about starting up a company. What would your one piece of advice be?
I can go if you want.
I think Hamish is frozen, so go for it, John.
Yeah, so the question he wanted to ask you about was, what's your advice for 2023 to startups and everyone in the media and advertising space?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Cookies and third-party tracking are ending. So start building your own walled communities, gather your own customers and start learning about them and building out their personas. Stop doing that batch and blast emailing. There are millions of companies that are all just sending emails out that have the same sell message and without knowing who their customer is and what they believe and why.
Hamish,
Thank
I
you,
just
John.
finished your question.
Yes, am I? Can you hear me now, King? I must have lost the connection. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
you can.
Yeah. Well, you missed my question, but Kinga put it. It's a seamless kind of event. This, if I fall over, Kinga picks up the baton. But yeah, the question is big piece of advice for 2023 for those who are starting up, scaling up, thinking about starting a new business. So we'll go to Guillaume on that question. Guillaume.
Well, I think I'd echo everything John just said. But obviously, the additional bit I'd just say is that you don't have to try and find. This is setting up a media business. Ways to get data from your customer without necessarily their explicit and clear consent. Clearly, this is where the whole thing is moving. Not saying that that's what John was advocating, but that if you ask nicely and give something better and fair in return, it might actually give you access to really important information without having to read reams and reams of terms and conditions about accepting various things. So I think the UX of consent is something to be really, really carefully looked at this year, and that if you're fairer and transparent with what you're doing with the data, you'll meet those ends, I think, successfully. More broadly, though, if you are looking to set up a business this year, be aware that it is extremely challenging, and that whilst there is still plenty of money out there to raise, it is not easy. So it's strap in, my recommendation.
Thank you, Guillaume. I'm sure we take that to heart. Kinga, can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, good. So just picking up one point you made very quickly, I can't resist as an unreconstructed data protection lawyer. I've always said to clients, look, there's the law and you have to comply, otherwise you get into trouble. But also, think about it this way. If your customers, your consumers, people you're asking questions of are really made aware and give their wholehearted consent, they're probably going to be better customers and give you better answers. So, there's always been, in my mind, a strong reason to be very consensual about collecting data, because it's in your best interest to do so. It's not just because it's the law. So, Greta, we come to you last. Your big piece of advice for the coming year to our budding startup entrepreneurs.
I would say definitely my piece of advice would be to keep observing what's happening, because things are moving quickly in all areas. And while you sit back and observe and make sure you're well informed, don't lose sight of what your passion and your original visualization was or vision was, because it's easy to get sidetracked and want to please everybody and want to take everybody's advice. And that ultimately just leads to a confusing idea. So while you're observing and you're keeping yourself informed, try and stay on track with what it is that you want, because that's unique.
Yeah, thank you so much, Greta. Well, I think you'll all agree. If we were in a room together, there'd be a big round of applause to our panelists, because they've been really inspirational, and we're really grateful to you. Lots of great ideas there. We're now going to bring the live stream